Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, fans of volleyball, players, coaches across the country. This is Coach Anthony Williams, CEO and founder of Connected Athletics. We are a startup company based here in Austin, Texas. We are putting together an exciting company with a lot of great people to create a platform for student athletes at the high school, college level, and for professional athletes, and for those people who want to work in the athletic field. We are super excited today to have Juliann Johnson, somebody I've known now for over a decade, followed her career when she was at University of Texas playing volleyball and being an All-American there. And while supporting my son on the football team, we just became good friends. Great kid, great family, and now just growing into a woman right before my eyes. And so Juliann Johnson, we'll get to her in 1 second. And while we're doing that, I want to thank our sponsors. Our first sponsor is a company called Buffalo Wild Wings. We all love wings. And they do a great job of also believing and giving student athletes a platform to tell their story. So I want to thank Brian Soltis, who is the regional VP over at Buffalo Wild Wings, for supporting our podcast. I also want to thank my friends at Go Edit Graphics up in Nebraska. If you are a high school or collegiate sports program and you want to add customized graphics to your outbound communication, whether it's a schedule change, player spotlight, things like that, you might want to check out my friends, Zach and the guys at the Go Edit Graphics. They do a great job of creating these very simple templates that you can modify and put in your school colors, add your mascot and things like that. Lastly, my friends over in Houston at I Am Epic 24/7. They are a new sports apparel company that does really exciting designs. They do jerseys, they do uniforms, they do workout gear. If you're tired of the same old brick and mortar stuff that you see in the stores, and you want to check something out new, go to epic247.com and check out some of their sports apparel. With all that out the way, I'm really excited to talk to Juliann Johnson, somebody I've known and seen grow and mature into this just outstanding young woman. Now she's a wife and a mother, and we'll get into that. But Juliann, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Thank you so much for coming on. Let's jump right in, Juliann. You know, we're doing some things here to help student athletes out, but I want to hear, the more I talk to you, the more I hear about your story, coming from California, like myself, you in Southern California. Talk to these student athletes who are future volleyball stars about how you fell into the game, why you started playing. You're obviously a great athlete, could have played a lot of sports. Why volleyball? And tell us about that whole high school recruiting experience.
Yeah, so, I, believe it or not, was a gymnast for a very long time.
Wow.
I started doing gymnastics when I was about 4 years old and got really serious. So, when you're young and little, you don't really know how tall you're going to be. And I was actually quite petite. I remember my mom telling me, she took me to the doctor once because she thought I was too small for my size, which I was in like a very low percentile. And, I just fell in love with gymnastics. I was doing it 6 times a week, 5 hours a night, going to and from school, eating dinner, doing my homework in the car. And I thought I was going to be an Olympic gymnast. That was my goal, until I hit a growth spurt, and that was no longer a dream. So after I, stopped doing gymnastics, when my feet were hitting the uneven bars and I started getting too big for all of those tumbles and the balance beam and stuff like that, I didn't really know what I was going to do sports wise. I did a 2-year stunt with cheerleading because I was a good tumbler, and some of my friends were doing competitive cheer at the time. It got really big when the Bring It On movie came out. So yeah. I went and did some cheerleading for a couple years and was a back spot. And, they put the tall ones in the back to hold the flyers up. And then I was a tumbler. And so that was really fun. But, my dad, who really wanted me to play sports, asked me to go to a SMU camp, which he was coaching at SMU at the time. And the head volleyball coach at SMU said, bring your daughter out. She's tall. She could really fit in on the volleyball court. And I went kicking and screaming. I was not happy. I did not want to go play volleyball. I didn't like team sports. I, was obviously an individual athlete for so long. So anyway, my first day, I fell in love with it. I am a visual learner. So watching the game, watching some of the older girls do the skills, I just really kind of honed in on how they were doing it and then just followed them. So my first day, I remember saying like, this is my sport. I want to play this. And all throughout that camp, I got better and learned a lot, and then joined my high school team. So I started playing volleyball when I was going into my 9th grade year. So summer camp going into my 9th grade year was my first introduction to serious volleyball. And I joined the team. My school was 2 years old at the time, so very brand new high school, not a lot of kids, at the school yet. So I had made the varsity team most likely because I was tall. But I learned really fast. So I would say that year, within my high school year of just 2.5 months of volleyball, I learned so much, and then joined club team because I had heard that, if I play club, that's where the recruiting game is. That's where I would get recruited and possibly be able to go play in college. And at that time, I still wasn't sure, like, if that was something I wanted to do or knew if I was good enough to do. But by the end of my 9th grade year playing club, I had been getting letters from Hawaii, different schools around the nation, UCLA. And so I knew then that this was a possibility and I wanted to get more serious about it. So that's my introduction to volleyball. And that was it didn't take long for me to fall in love with it. So I never looked back. And I was a track runner as well in high school, and had to drop that my junior year because of conflicts. And that's another story for another day, but.
Yeah. Well, Juliann, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of young athletes watching this podcast. I'm sure a lot of them can relate to your experience. Some girls started with basketball or soccer, and maybe outgrew it or just didn't have fun anymore. Tell us, when did you say volleyball is what's going to help me pay for my education in college?
I would say I knew around my sophomore year of high school that was going to be my ticket into getting a college scholarship and going to play. I didn't really know a lot about college sports or that would be an opportunity until around that time. Being around other competitive athletes in the club space really helped me because they had already known that was what they wanted to do. I was just kind of playing it for fun. It was something that I really liked and I was good at. But it wasn't until around my sophomore year that I realized, like, this is something that I need to get serious about if I want to play and, start thinking about schools that I would want to look at. And around that age, I was a young kid. So I had almost a year younger than everybody around me. And I, felt like, how can I decide where I want to live, in 3 years? How can someone do that? So I just did a lot of research, back then, and I don't know if this is still the case, but I was getting their big pamphlet books. So they would have 150-page books that they would send to their athletes about their volleyball program. And I still have them. I have a box of them, about maybe 300 of them, from every school that you can possibly think of. And so I would just look through those books and, go on their websites and really kind of research if that was some place that I could see myself playing volleyball and also getting an education and living there. So that was kind of how the process began.
Juliann, go back to your growth spurt. I'm sure it happens to a lot of girls where they're like, I'm going to be a gymnast, or I'm going to play shortstop, or I'm going to be a point guard. How tall, how many inches did you grow over a summer that made you realize, well, you know what, gymnastics is no longer my future? How tall, how did that happen? How'd you feel?
So I grew 6 inches in one summer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I slept a lot and ate a lot of spaghetti. So that was a big one. And like I said, I was pretty petite for a while. When I hit 7th grade, I was tall for my grade. You could start to see that I was getting taller. But it wasn't until 9th grade year when I hit 6 foot that everyone around me was like, what happened? And I didn't just grow up, I grew wider too. Shoulders got wider, just like more thicker, like you could just tell, athletic. And that wasn't what I looked like the year before. So yeah, it didn't take long for me to hit those 6 inches. It was one summer.
Wow. Geez. Most guys would kill for that. And for girls who are like, I don't want 6 inches at one time, but it worked out for you. I want to kind of transition, kind of bounce around here, but so obviously recruiting back when you were in high school, there wasn't as much social media as it is now. I'm going to fast forward. Now you're coaching here at a local high school. You're helping girls move from high school to college. Tell us your perspective of how recruiting went for you in the non-social media world to how it is now, and how you're helping kids realize their dreams of playing volleyball in college now using social media.
Yeah, so like I said, kind of about the pamphlets and the books that we were getting from the program, and just looking at the website, those were the only real ways that you could kind of know who the school was and who the coaches were that were recruiting you. And then vice versa, the only ways that they would know who you were is by visits. So, and that's still prevalent today. Coaches are going to club tournaments and they're present there, but really kind of being a little bit more personable, I think, with handwritten letters. And, I kept everything from when I was getting recruited, and I just actually moved and was able to go through that box. And man, the handwritten letters I got from these coaches were super cool to read. So just like that exchange, I feel like maybe a little bit more personable, because you kind of had to try a little harder. There's no social media. There was no quick fix to kind of see who the college that was recruiting you was, or the college coaches couldn't see who we were.
So Juliann, you were just talking about the difference in recruiting in today's world using social media compared to the times back when it was these big pamphlets, and how you're seeing the difference from you as a player to now you as a coach helping student athletes out. Give us a little bit more insight into that.
Yeah, so I was saying that, we were getting big pamphlets and just having to look at the website for, the schools that were recruiting us, and vice versa. The coaches are not getting a ton of insight into who we are unless they're visiting us and talking to us, on those visits when they're going to club tournaments or in home visits or even visiting our high schools. And, that's not as prevalent today. They are still going to club tournaments and are able to see the kids, but because of social media today, and as a coach, I'm seeing this, you can put yourself out there as a player a lot easier. They can see not only who you are as a player with video and, your workouts and things like that, but just seeing who you are as a person, who your friends are, if you're spending time with your family and you're posting about that. So I would say that social media is a huge tool for recruiting these days. And on the contrary, seeing the schools social media is a really big deal too. You can really see, if they're piping their athletes up, how many people are in the crowd at their games, instead of having to physically go on campus and see all of these things, which is still a great thing. It's easy to kind of find out and eliminate. If you have a bunch of schools looking at you, it's easy to kind of eliminate based off of their social media and seeing, what they're offering that way. So, I would say it's a completely different day and age since when I was playing, and it's definitely interesting being on the other side of it as a coach and helping out these athletes that I'm working with. They have, their recruiting profiles on these different websites. They're, using their social media. They have separate social media handles that are just for their volleyball page and their volleyball video and things that they're doing, on the court. And then, it's a big deal. You can't put things on there now. Coaches can kind of look at you. It's like when you're applying for a job. You can't, have different things on there, partying or crazy things that you're doing, because your coaches that are recruiting you are going to be able to see those things. So it's definitely a tool, but it's definitely gotten a lot of people in trouble in different sports. People have lost scholarships over that. So it's definitely something that is different and was not something I had to worry about or even, use as a tool when I was being recruited.
Yeah. Well, not everybody's a national prospect like you, or every school in the country wanted you. But let's go back. We're going to tie back on that later on. But let's go back to your transition. So former gymnast, didn't want to play volleyball, ends up falling in love with it, gets recruited by top schools, great career, University of Texas, Big 12 Player of the Year, playing for NCAA championships, played professionally. Talk about that transition from high school to college and playing around the world in different countries. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so it's a big jump level wise from high school to college, especially if you go to a college that's ranked top 5 or top 10 in the nation. You're playing with the best around you. You might have been the best coming out of high school, which was my situation. I was number 2 recruit in the nation coming out and was not guaranteed a spot on the court at Texas. There were several former top 5 recruits coming out during their time on the Texas roster that were in their junior and senior year in my spot. So, as volleyball players know, there's only 2 outside hitters on the court at one time, 1 right side hitter, 2 middle blockers can play, 1 libero, 1 setter, maybe 2 if you're doing a double sub. So you have to fight. And there's 16, 17 players on the roster. And just because you come out, guns blazing and you're a hot commodity, things are hard. And sometimes you're not pushed in high school because of that reason. Like, I think the levels of top high school players and then, everyone else under them is a big stark contrast. Whereas in college, it gets very much closer. And so you may be really, really good and one of the best in college, but there's 10 other girls that are just as good as you. So the small things matter. The speed of the game gets a lot faster. When you're playing in these club tournaments and you're playing different levels of teams throughout, you're not seeing that as much. The Big 12, maybe it back then, I would say back then when I was playing, we had Nebraska, which was they won championship, I think, when I was in my 4 years, or maybe a year before I came in. Iowa State was someone that was really, really good. They pushed us a lot. A&M was a decent team. And even if they weren't that great at the time, it didn't matter because that rivalry was tough. So you go into their territory, you're putting up a good fight. So, the level of play, and it's still that way today, but the level of play, you're seeing someone every night that's difficult. In club, you can kind of have your game that you're walking through. Maybe you get to the last, the quarterfinals when you start to get pushed a little bit in these club tournaments. So that transition is big, not only physically, but mentally as well. There's a lot more taxing. You're having to focus on schoolwork, and probably that schoolwork is getting harder as well, unless you're going to a college preparatory school in high school. You're learning having a load of school and a load with volleyball there's no break, right? You have to figure that out. So being a college athlete is no joke. And you kind of learn that. You have to learn that quick. Otherwise, you're not going to see the court within, that first month. So, and another hard thing too is that volleyball is a fall sport. So your first year, you're hit with your sport and school at the same time. In winter, you have basketball. You have all these other sports. You have track in the spring. So if you come to school and it's your first year and you have a winter or spring sport, you have a little bit of time to work out with the team, get to know the campus, know where your classes are. When you're a volleyball player, you're lucky to come in a month before, maybe with summer school. Sometimes not a lot of kids get to do that. You come in on preseason and you're having to learn the weight room. You're having to learn, all this new skills and your coaches and your teammates. And then you start school and you're traveling already. So, that's something to think about too. I think with volleyball players, and football and, all those fall sports have it a little bit more complicated when you're a freshman coming in. Yeah. So I would say that transition was not an easy one. I did have a good head on my shoulders and I was very motivated as a freshman. Like I said, I was not guaranteed a spot on the court, but that sort of motivated me even more. I was kind of that athlete that was like, oh, you told me I'm not guaranteed to start? Let me prove it to you. I'm going to be a starter this year. So that was kind of my mentality. Yeah. And that really got me through my freshman year. And I would say I had a very dominant freshman year. I was National Freshman Player of the Year. Yeah. So that kind of just, I put myself out there, I earned my spot. And then kind of, throughout my college career, I had my ups and downs. My sophomore year, we say it's a sophomore slump. I had this really great freshman year and then kind of not so great sophomore year. So had to learn how to navigate that new space. But but overall finished a great career. And, I think it was all due to all the help that you get when you're in college, 100%. You get your tutors, you have a college counselor, you have everyone helping you around you that wants you to be successful. But really, you got to be motivated, and you can't really have too many mental lapses, I would say. And it's really important to get the help when you need it mentally. So I would say I used all my resources, and then was also super motivated. And then the transition from college to professional is even more stark. It's insane how much better volleyball can get. You think you're playing with the top dogs. I played in a national championship against some of the best players, in the USA. And then you go to Italy or Turkey or China or Japan, and you realize that there's a whole world out there of volleyball that's being played, and it's being played really, really well. A lot of countries in Europe and Asia have volleyball at the forefront. It is the #1 women's sport there, and it's a professional sport. They don't treat it as amateur. So kids are growing up seeing that. Kids are growing up seeing professional volleyball. And in the USA, we don't see much volleyball. If we do, it's the Olympics at the highest level, and it's every 4 years. And then we're kind of like, okay, we don't see volleyball anymore. Nowadays, we're seeing more games being put on networks, college networks, and ESPN and things like that, which is great. But back in my day, if you were in the national championship, we were on ESPN3. So, you weren't, that was really cool. And people were texting me and calling me after that game that I made to the national championship, because I was on TV, but that was the only games that were streamed back then. Now we see a little bit more. But when you get to the professional level, that is a normal thing in those countries, that they're watching volleyball constantly. It's always on national television in Italy, for men's and women's. And so everyone is really good that plays at the top level there. And you're playing with a lot of Olympic athletes from different parts of the world. So not just your USA top players, which are some of the best, but your Italian top players. Your Chinese top players who just won the Olympics, in 2016, the Brazilians, and they're scattered all throughout the world in these different clubs, professional clubs. And then you're just kind of a drop in that water too. So you have to, again, prove yourself, and again, be motivated. And another thing that's different from college is that some professional teams don't have all the equipment and the nice things that we had at Texas. I had to learn how to use a weight room that maybe had a few weights in there. Didn't have a great locker room. Every gym you would go into didn't always have air conditioning, and it was the heat of summer. So, you just have to be adaptive, and you have to learn how to accept what's in front of you, be okay with that, and then go play your best game. And that's not always easy. So those transitions, I would say, were the hardest in each one of my career.
Yeah. We talk a little bit about, as we finish up here, you talked about all the stressors of being a freshman in college and school and study and being on the road and all those things, and then traveling internationally. How did you take care of it? Mental health is a big issue now that we're now finally talking about, that us career athletes have known forever. Back then, and even in your day, it was just kind of, hey, suck it up, go to class, get your job done, and play at a high level. Tell us your thoughts on the importance of mental health and how we should keep an eye on that for these young student athletes now, with all the stressors of just playing, school, academics, social media pressure, friends, family. How did you handle that back then?
Yeah, so, it wasn't as prevalent to talk about back then, but I was so blessed with coaches that had given me those resources and shown me that, if I'm struggling, we have these resources, and we'd love to offer them to you. So I had a sports psychologist. We had a sports psych for our team, and I actually met with him one-on-one many, many, many times during my college career, because I was just somebody that was really hard on myself. I have what they call perfectionism, and
Mhm.
it can be used for great things, but it can
Yep.
also be very hindering. So I
Yep.
had to learn how to balance that perfectionism, and working with the sports psych really helped with my on-court situation. And I also met with the counselor off the court a couple times with the stresses of school and family, being away from home.
Yeah.
I was growing up in California and living in Texas, and you just don't have your people around you, and you have to learn how to find new people around you that are going to help you and be there for you. And got to find your circle. So really trusting and leaning on your coaches, and hopefully those are people that you feel comfortable talking to about these things. If not, you should really look into that. I think that should be a number one thing when kids are looking at colleges and deciding where they're going to go, is what connection am I going to have with the coach? That is a huge relationship that you're going to need to have. And I was fortunate to have a relationship with my coach that was open, and I could go sit in his office, in the assistant's office, and bawl my eyes out.
Mhm.
I could talk about different things besides volleyball with them. And that was really helpful. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Also, don't feel bad if you need a counselor or you need therapy, because I did it, and I was in a time where it was not normal to talk about, and it felt not great to say, like, yeah, I have to go see a counselor about my problems. But nowadays I would say it's a little more accepted, but don't let that be the reason why you don't go and get the help you need. It is a hard thing to balance all of these
Yeah.
things, and it is not normal to just kind of breeze through it. It's not. I would talk to millions and millions of college athletes, and they probably would say, like, no, there was not one time that things were just easy breezy beautiful.
Mhm.
So it's okay to have the struggles, and it's okay to seek that help. Just make sure that the people around you are trustworthy, and that you can ask for that
Yeah.
help.
Well, you've made the successful transition through your career, but the most important transition, and you and I have talked about our passion for helping student athletes out, is now you're a wife and you're a mom. And tell us how, and I'm obviously jaded, being a former athlete myself, career athlete. Tell us how being an athlete through all the gymnastic years and volleyball and high school and college, how's it helped you now when your sport is over, be a better wife, a better mom to Trey? And talk to us about that transition to more life skills.
Yeah, so I always credit my time management skills to being a college athlete. I learned how to manage my time to the T impeccably when I was in college, because you have to learn how to balance. And now as a working mom, I'm married, I have so many things that I'm balancing at one time. I learned how to navigate that space. I learned how to navigate that space when I was in college and beyond that. So another transition in my life that was not easy. I got married when I was still playing, so that was fun because we got to travel together and see the
Mhm.
world together. And then we had our son, Roderick the third, who we call Trey. And I was not playing at the time that I had him, but decided to come back out of retirement and play one more season when I was just 6 months postpartum with him. And
Wow.
that was more to prove to myself that I could do it and just kind of check something off the box, but
Mhm.
also along the process, I learned that it was also about teaching my son that you can really do anything you put your mind to, and you can learn to be, have your stuff, and I can be myself 100% with, volleyball, but I can also give 100% to my family. And it doesn't have to be, a super big sacrifice where, something's getting taken away. It's a balance, and you have to learn how, to balance all of that. But it's super fulfilling to know that I could literally do anything I want with the support of my husband, and having my son get to watch and have a front seat to all of that, so that when he grows up, he knows that, like, my mom is awesome and she did all these awesome things, and, like, I'm not afraid to kind of go after my
Yeah.
dreams and do what I want. So that's been the most fulfilling, I think, is coming from an awesome career and learning all these great things, and then to put it all into my family and to put it all back into a working career, being a coach and a full-time athletic, on full-time athletic faculty at my school where I'm here basically feels like 24/7. I am able to give the kids around me what I'm giving to my son as well, which is that same confidence and that same insight into my life about, here's what I did and here's how I did it.
Yeah.
And, encouraging the athletes that I'm coaching to do the same and to go for those dreams in whatever capacity that may look like. It may not be pro volleyball, it may not even be college volleyball, but, through our experiences of playing sport, you just learn so much. You learn about interpersonal relationships. You learn how to communicate. You learn how to communicate in difficult situations with adults. I think being a coach that I am the coach that I would have wanted for myself, that I believe that I can give to these kids is that somebody who can come, they can come talk to me whenever they feel that they have an issue to talk about playing time or just things going on off the court. I want to be there for them in so many ways. I'm not their friend, but I am somebody that is there for them and that will push them to, their limits because I see them. I believe in them. They are me. So it's been a really cool transition and I'm still learning a lot, being in my first year of coaching full time and, as a mom, just like learning as we go, as as a parent, you just kind of learn as you go, first one. So yeah, it's been great. I'm thoroughly enjoying this part of my life.
No, it's awesome. And it's a great transition as we finish up here and how we can scale that passion and your experience and your journey with others who aren't here in Austin and don't go to your school. So as we finish up here, really excited to announce that Juliann's going to be part of our team as we start to roll out our next product. We've done the Spotlight podcast now for the last year and a half during the pandemic and sharing experiences of student athletes or career athletes like Juliann and others with athletes across the country. And now we're going to put all that into an app. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for a new app from us called RAW, RAWW, which stands for Recruiting Athletes Worldwide. And we'll have career athletes like Juliann and Aaron Williams and Deuce Vaughn and others sharing their experiences with the next generation of athletes in this new era of social media, mental health, NIL, transfer portal. We want to keep you updated with people who have really just gone through it right now. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll have Juliann helping out not just student athletes here in Central Texas, but all over the country and eventually all over the world. So stay tuned for that. We're very excited about that. Juliann, thank you for your time. Every time I think I know everything about you, I learn something new. And I thank you so much for sharing your story. Please tell Roderick and Trey I said hi and the rest of the family, and we'll be in contact soon. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Anthony.
All right, we'll see you later.
See ya.